What is up, everyone? It's me, Jrod, the filmmaker, former filmmaker, frequent fighting gamer from Philadelphia, and this week's video is an idea that basically fell into my lap. I posted a TikTok video about why they should bring back some classic video games like NBA and NFL Street, Def Jam Fight for New York, and shortly after I posted that video, I found out that the Def Jam Fight for New York community is actually still alive and thriving. A pro fighting game player and commentator, Katana Prime, was doing an Ask Me Anything on his YouTube, and that's where I found it out. That Def Jam Fight for New York actually got so much support at the last major fighting game tournament before the pandemic that the top 8 matches were on the main stage, which means basically that this game, which is 17 years old, it was 15 years old at the time, got enough support to rival games that had just come out like Mortal Kombat 11. And this got me thinking about video game death. Not death in video games like these,
Sub-Zero wins. Flawless victory. Fatality.
but the death of video games. You know, your video game having a lifespan as long as there's an active player community and developer support. But once the community stops being active, then the game dies, you know? I'm familiar with this concept of a game's life cycle as someone who plays, you know, the NetherRealm Studios fighting games. So it starts off with the pre-release period, the exciting time. You know, it's when the game is first being revealed and features and characters are being debuted for the first time. Then the game is released, and this is when everyone starts to grind, really. People learn who their characters are, they learn the meta of the game, and they actively try to get good and see how good they can really get in the game. The devs who created the game, they might add a patch here and there. They might add new content to the game after a while, but then they usually have to move on to their next project. Also, the people who are playing it probably want to move on to a new game. And so that's how a game can go from being like one of the top most viewed and played games to just being basically abandonware the next day. However, does the game really die? You know, even if no one has played it for 15 years or longer, is it dead because of that? And also, how do we know that no one is playing the game? Because what if one person is playing the game alone in their basement, not streaming or making any content? Is that enough to keep a game alive? That's what we're going to explore in this video. So starting off, I'll use the example of Nickelodeon AllStar Brawl. The game just came out pretty recently, and by now you guys have seen my first gameplay video. I'll link it in the description and add a card. The platform fighting game genre is actually booming right now, but it's hard for a new game to come into the space because there are a lot of fans who believe that it's Super Smash Bros. Or nothing. So people said that Nickelodeon AllStar Brawl would be dead on arrival. I know, dead before it even launched. Now, am I tripping, or does that sound like hating? It definitely is. And yes, this game has had its rough patches. You know, it was pretty broken when it first came out, but the same game has also been able to bring in about 500,000 views on Twitch when there's a event or a competitive tournament. And there is still content being planned for this game that hasn't been revealed yet. Well, actually, the first post-launch content just got revealed, and I just checked it out and reacted to it. This game is in its infancy. It literally just came out, and some people would still call it a dead game. Now, I get the game is built around this competitive versus, you know, player versus player atmosphere, and it has very little single-player content. That's one of my biggest gripes with the game. But if I was the only person playing the game, it would still be alive for me. And if I play it with my friends and family, it will technically be alive for them. And not only will it be alive, but it'll be new to them. And if they wanted to play more and learn a new character or get good themselves, then the lifespan of the game is just beginning for them. That's why I don't think a game can just die. It's a little bit harder and more complicated than that. Even if the dev support and the competitive scene for a game comes to an end, then there's always the Necros. A Necro is a nickname for someone who plays dead games, which is kind of oxymoronic when you think about it, because how's it dead if someone is playing it and someone is dedicated to play it, you know? But necro, it's a root word that means death. You know, you got words like necromancer, necrotic, necropolis. And it's basically used as a derogatory term most of the time, like, oh, you were late to the party on this game. Now that it's your favorite game, no one else wants to play it. You're behind on the curve, you know? And especially when it comes to the competitive scene, because a lot of people will say if you're a necro, you know, you were just basically ducking the really good players who used to be here. And you're only good at it because those players have moved on to something else. But I'd make the argument that most games are even harder to be really good at if you're a necro. Because nowadays there's like a huge sense of community around these games. So if one person notices something about the game's meta, something foundational that, you know, is really important to how they play the game, eventually everyone who plays the game will find that thing out through things like, I don't know, Discord channels and YouTube and tutorials and all these different types of ways that we spread knowledge about these games. If you look at someone like Ninja Killer 212, I don't know if you guys know of him, but he is one of the best Mortal Kombat players to ever exist. But when he really started to get recognized for his skills, he was playing Mortal Kombat X, and the game was already dead by most standards. However, once MK11's life cycle started up, he was there. He was there from the very beginning, and he became a household name for most people. And there he proved that whether the game is brand new or has one foot out the door, his skills are still, you know, they still stand up in either case. So I've said all of this to say that, no, I don't think that games can just die like that. You know, they don't exist the same way that we do. So even though we're programmed to want to give everything an age and a date and a time and a number, because that's how we measure things, I don't really think games exist in that same way. I mean, literally, they're like these contained worlds, and the time progression and the everything that lives inside of this world, it doesn't progress at the same rate and time that we do. It literally only progresses when we choose to progress it. So like a game that is maybe 15 minutes long could last you for a couple years depending on how much of it you play at a time. And yeah, so I think that these games can't die, and they easily have the potential to outlive us. You know, we can die, definitely, but I don't think these games can. Look at someone like Ralph Higginbottom. No, you don't know Ralph Higginbottom? You probably don't know his name, but you know the name of the game that he came up with, Pong Tennis for Two. And it's one of the first video games ever, so that makes Ralph one of the first video game developers ever. And he has since passed, but who doesn't know about Pong? I mean, almost everyone does. And then there are other people. If you look at someone like Satoru Iwata, don't want to mess up that name. He is a former president and CEO of Nintendo from 2002 to about 2012. He oversaw the launch of the DS, the launch of the Wii, and he produced a couple of Nintendo titles, including Super Smash Bros., and he was the executive producer on Mario Kart Super 8 Deluxe, which was released after he passed. Then there's Miguel Parra, who was a developer and software engineer for NetherRealm Studios, who worked on the production of Injustice 2, and sadly he passed before the game was completed. And Jerry Lawson, who, if it wasn't for Jerry Lawson, I probably wouldn't be making this video. Jerry was an engineer who invented the first video game console with interchangeable cartridges. So yeah, we all kind of owe him in some sort of way. Now, unfortunately, all of these different pioneers in the industry have passed, but their work lives on because they all helped to create many games and titles that are still very enjoyable to this day. Now imagine not playing their games and remembering their memories and their contributions because the game is old or it doesn't have enough people playing it besides you. These games are just as brilliant and inspiring as they were when they first release. So my point is, you can see how prematurely killing a game is not only a slap in the face to these game developers, but also to the people whose job it is to preserve and archive gaming history. And here's what you probably look like to them when you're trying to prematurely kill these games.
You're doing the right thing. Oh, my goodness! Goodness gracious! Oh, my! Oh, goodness!
But I mean, look, the proof is in the pudding. You don't have to take my word for it. If you look at how many people flock towards these dead games, I mean, look at how many people want Xbox back compatible games, or Nintendo's N64 games, or Sega's Mega Pack, or remasters. Like the Grand Theft Auto Definitive Edition is one of the most talked about games right now, and it's getting some heat for not being completely done, but only because how many people were clamoring to be able to replay a game that they consider part of their childhood. And I, myself included, I am definitely not excluded from that group. I had never played GTA San Andreas, so I got an original Xbox copy of it from GameStop, and it's backwards compatible, so I'm playing it on my Xbox One right now. It's a ton of fun. Yeah, and I also in anticipation of Halo Infinite, which comes out today, actually, when I'm recording this video, I went and got the Master Chief Collection so that I could replay the campaigns I never played, like the very first Halo game, Combat Evolved. I'm about halfway through the story now, and I'm enjoying it. I got some games like Bully and the Jedi Knight Collection on Steam. I got Far Cry 3 and Crackdown 2 on Xbox. These days, I might be even more excited for these nostalgic games than for the new ones. So back to my earlier question. If only one person is playing the game alone in their basement, not streaming or making any content, is that enough to keep the game alive? Yes, I would think so. Just one person, that's all it needs, that's all it takes, and that's why I think these games can truly never die. And yeah, so that's basically it. But you're probably wondering, why did I sit here for about 10-12 minutes and talk about games the entire time without playing any games at least once? And that would be because that's what next week's video is. Part 2, Dead Game Part 2. We're going to be playing some of these dead games and determining whether they really are dead. And by we, I mean me, and I'm going to bring along my immediate family. So yeah, I know I said that only one person is enough to keep the game alive, but I wanted to get some other opinions on this, because personally, I might be biased. I think these games can die, but let's see what some other people, whether they're gamers, non-gamers, somewhere in between, let's see what they think about these dead games. And so that'll be it for this one, you guys. That is my video essay, I guess you could consider, on dead games, and why I don't, it's a term that exists, but I don't think a game can be dead. Literally, think about a game that's like, oh, this game is dead, no one plays it. If I picked it up right now and started playing, it's back to life, just like that. Which, maybe they're asleep, maybe they're dormant, maybe they're hibernating, but these games can't really die. And so yeah, that'll be it, guys. I want you to do me a favor and hit me with a 3-hit combo. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. That would be perfect. And tell me if you feel me, and I'll see you next week when we play some of these dead games. Peace out. Looks so sick, bro. Oh my goodness. I love the new costume.
I know that you sit on the throne of your former employer.
Yep. We know who that is.
With fear.
Make sure I'm not